Squid Game's final season had no arcs, no payoff, and no point. It didn't need to be a disappointment, but instead of writing compelling character arcs or delivering on the story set up in season 2, the show chose to create paper-thin characters and give us no satisfaction on any of the arcs that were previously set up. I wrote 5 whole pages of notes on what I felt went wrong and how it could have been done better. And now I'm going to yap about it. Season 3 is not horrible or worthless, and I think it was worth watching, but it's certainly the weakest season of the show, and I felt like it was a disappointing ending to a great series. Season 1 felt like a planned out passion project. Season 2, and certainly Season 3, felt like they were made simply because of the success of the first. I highly doubt that the last 2 seasons of the show were already written when the first season aired. So let's get into my notes. The first section of my notes is what I put as the good. I felt like the first and second episodes of season 3 were honestly great. I think seeing Gi-hun's utter defeat after his failed revolution really did hit pretty hard. I especially loved a lot of the shots of him staring down the PTSD guy. I don't remember his player number and I didn't look it up, but I thought a lot of those shots were really fun and entertaining and quite intimidating. I also enjoyed his part during the hide and seek game where he was chasing him down and hunting him. I feel like it was important for his character to see him not be the good guy, right? He lost, he failed, and he was taking that rage out on someone who he blamed for the failure. Part of what makes a great character are their flaws, and so seeing Gi-hun embrace his hatred and just hunt that man down, it did some good for his character. I also really loved the setup for the hide and seek game. Before they reveal what the game is, we see all of the characters get split up on red team and blue team, and once we see Gi-hun get put on the red team, I kind of felt doomed for everyone I saw get put on the blue team because Gi-hun has plot armor, right? He's the main character. Typically in these team games, one team wins, one team loses. As the characters get split from one team to another, you start to feel a lot of conflicting emotions. You see characters that you hate on red team and characters that you love on red team, and the same is true with the blue team. It kind of gave me this overwhelming sense of dread because I knew however that episode was going to end, I was gonna be hurt. And then once they reveal the game and how it works, I was flooded with hope because it was clear that any character could die and any character could survive. I think it was a great way to put viewers on the edge of their seat before the game even started. The next thing I have on my notes of the good was the class commentary. Season 1 had a very clear message about what it was trying to talk about, right? It's about capitalism. If you've seen some of my other videos, you know I'm all about death of the author, but it's pretty clear what the author's intent was with the first season of Squid Game. Seasons 2 and 3 do act to expand on that a little bit. One of the ways that seasons 2 and 3 expand on the class commentary is by including voting. This is a direct representation of something that takes place in a lot of our democratic societies. One half is voting for one thing and the other is voting for the other, each with their own sets of reasoning and logic behind their votes. I especially loved how in season 3 we see a few characters change their votes because they're scared of what the other side will do to them. Another way season 3 expands on this commentary is by having characters get upset with Gi-hun for trying something so revolutionary when they could have just continued to vote in order to make a change in the system. To me, this very much seems like a leftist versus liberal conversation. Radical change versus changing the system from within. That was really about it with its expansion on class commentary. That's also about all I had written down for the good. There are a few additional attempts to expand on this class commentary aspect, but it honestly felt like me reaching as a viewer, trying to place that commentary there in the show rather than the show commenting on that part of society. For example, the baby. It might represent us putting our hope in the next generation for a better world, but it doesn't really set that up in any way, and to me it felt like I was projecting that message onto the show. I was coping really hard during season 3. I was trying to give it credit wherever I could, okay? I also feel like they missed a few great opportunities to include other pieces of commentary in the show, like how our society abandons the elderly with the old mother character. I also felt like season 3 tried to comment on how our societies treat drug users with Min-soo and his whole arc of taking the pills and kind of losing his mind and everyone being like, push the druggie off, push the druggie off. But again, I felt like that was me reaching for some kind of message in the show when in reality, I think it was just something they wanted to do with the character. Moving on to some of my more direct criticisms, my first section in my notes was paper-thin characters. The first characters I have written down are player 222 and 333. So starting with player 222, I gotta be honest, what is her character besides being pregnant? I understand a lot of people really loved that character, but really, what is her character besides being pregnant and being mad at her ex? I think there are some good elements to her character, like for example, her refusal to take help from her shitty ex-boyfriend and instead choosing to entrust her child with someone who she actually trusts and like going out in her own way. That felt like kind of a sort of feminist moment to me, but again, really, what's her character besides being pregnant and having a really, really shitty ex-boyfriend? Moving on to that boyfriend, player 333, what's his character besides being in debt like all the other characters in the show and being a shitty guy? He has his whole arc of like kind of becoming a worse person throughout the games, but honestly, I really didn't buy that arc at all. His arc in Season 2 and the first 2 episodes of Season 3 is all about trying to reconcile with player 222 and trying to do anything he can to help protect his new family. And with this in mind, during the hide and seek game, when he just starts killing other players even though he's already passed just to increase the pot of prize money, I really didn't buy that change in his character. It pissed me off for another reason, which we'll get to later. I especially didn't buy his whole turn on the baby during the final game. Again, I'm repeating myself here, but his character arc in Season 2 and the first half of Season 3 was about protecting 222 and trying to save their kid. So when we see him just go tell Gi-hun to like, no, you're staying over there, give me the baby, and Gi-hun's like, so you're gonna kill the baby? And he's like, yeah, right? I didn't buy that at all. Not even a little bit. He just kind of flips on a dime. I've seen some TikTok comments talking about how seeing 222 kill herself and things like that were just things that broke him, right? They didn't sell that to me. I think an argument could be made that maybe he's a representation of toxic masculinity and he wanted to control 222 and the baby. And once he no longer had the ability to control 222 because she was dead, he didn't care about the baby. And while that could be possible, they didn't set that up really. I think if they had taken that character arc and defined it a little bit more, I would have been fine with it. But as it sits with what was actually put out and the show we got, I just don't buy his change into a villain. He was a shitty guy before, but he wasn't evil until he was, right? I just didn't buy it. The next character in my notes is also player 222. It's the baby.
Let's go.
I didn't give a fuck about this baby.
Fuck them kids, bro.
It's not a character, it's simply a baby. Player 222 and player 333 were already some of my least favorite characters in the show, even from Season 2, and so the show focusing on their kid and Gi-hun's arc trying to save it, I didn't care at all. This isn't me being some heartless bastard either. If I found a baby in the woods, I would do everything in my power to save that child. But like, this is a TV show. I'm here to watch characters and their conflicts, not a baby. I think if the writing was a lot tighter, they could have made me care about the baby, but they didn't. Gi-hun is kind of just like, okay, I guess I'll protect the baby. And then we are supposed to care about the baby. I think the mom's speech to Gi-hun was an attempt at this, but it just wasn't enough. I did really love her speech. I thought it was quite beautiful, to be honest with you, but it just, again, it didn't make me care. If they had instead had Gi-hun respond to her speech in a way talking about his own abandonment for his daughter and setting up that arc of like, I failed her, I failed the games, I won't fail this baby, right? If they had done something like that, I think I would have been a lot more convinced with Gi-hun's care for the child and been more invested in the baby. The last section I have in my notes for paper thin characters is we lost the dynamic between the frontman and Gi-hun. The dynamic between the pair in Season 2 was awesome. I loved it. The frontman joining the games in Season 2 and sabotaging them while simultaneously helping them without them knowing his true identity was honestly electric. This whole energy is certainly missed in Season 3. I don't really have a solution for this one unless they dramatically change the way Seasons 2 ended and the entirety of Season 3 as a result, but I don't think this really would have been as much of a problem if it weren't for the other characters that don't work without the group dynamic, which is actually my next section in my notes. A lot of the characters that are left in Season 3 don't really work on their own without the group dynamic that was there before. I think the ones that work the best without their original group are Thanos' lackey and Minsu. Thanos' buddy is just a less funny version of Thanos, so he kind of fills that same antagonistic role that Thanos did, just to a lesser degree, but it works okay. His downfall and the way he goes out was kind of satisfying, at least. Minsu's character arc is okay as well. I didn't mind it that much. Overall, I still found him as a pretty uninteresting character, but it was nice to see him grow a spine and stand up to his bully, even if he had to take acid to do so. Moving on to the characters who actually really didn't work without that group dynamic, I have first in my notes the mother and son pair. Both of those characters don't really work without the other. I liked both of them a lot as characters, I enjoyed their dynamic, and I thought they were fun in the group. I know some people didn't, but oh well, to each their own. However, if you take one of them away, what is the other one? What's the mother without her son? What's the son without her mother? I think the mom is the better written of the two because she's still caring for some of the other characters in the group, like a motherly figure, like with player 222 and my queen, player 120. But even still, the main part of her character comes with her care for her actual biological son. We all knew going into hide and seek that one of them was certainly dead, and so I think they missed a pretty big opportunity to make them a little more compelling characters. As they were written before hide and seek, if they just left the other one alive in the games without their pair, then the remaining person would be a kind of bland and boring character. That is unfortunately what happened. Again, I did really love the mother's speech, and her suicide was quite shocking and morbid, and it did make me feel sad, admittedly, but her death was simply a shock, not a satisfying end to her character. Here's what I think could have been done. If the son had survived instead of the mother, then he could have had a whole character arc about overcoming his dependence on his mother now that she was gone and becoming a more independent person. Obviously, he still would have died, but we would have seen some character growth in him before that death. They could have started this character arc by having him actually kill his mother in the hide and seek game when she offers herself to be a sacrifice to save his life. Then in the scenes and the game that follows, he could have been actively trying to be a more independent person without his mother's presence, and that, in my opinion, would have made his death a little bit more emotionally impactful. If in my alternate timeline I'm proposing here, it was the mother character who continued to live on like we have in the show, things could have stayed the same up till her speech with Gi-hun. After killing her son in the game and after her speech to Gi-hun, she could have had a character arc about her joining Gi-hun and trying to save the baby. In her arc, she could have chosen to stay around to help that baby, to save it as a way to atone for failing her biological son. This would have played in really nicely with the changes I proposed to Gi-hun's character when I talked about the baby earlier on, and I think it would have made her eventual death a lot more satisfying and more than just a shock. Now, in order to do this, I don't think the next game could have been jump rope because her knees weren't making it through that game, but you understand my point. As she was written in the show, her death only hits because of the shock, not necessarily because she was a super deep character with a compelling character arc. The next character I have written down on my list is the Cancer Dad. Like with player 222, what is his character besides having a sick daughter? I'll answer my own question for you. There's nothing. That's his character. He has a sick daughter. I don't really have a lot to say about him. I didn't care about him. I'm being totally honest here. I did not give a fuck about him. I did like the guard character, but I think she's in my notes later, so we'll get to that in a minute. The last character I have in this section is, unfortunately, Gi-hun, player 456. He's not a completely flat character like some of the other characters I mentioned, and he does work on his own okay, but the reason why I have him in here is because he really does lose a lot as a character after the events of season 2. I think his character loses a lot without the front man and without his buddy character, who I don't remember his name. I apologize. I liked him a lot in season 2. I was sad when he got shot by the front man, but I didn't look up his name. I'm sorry. Gi-hun has a discernible character arc in season 3, but the problem is that it's not really that convincing. He's extremely distraught and upset after his failed attempt, and he murders the PTSD guy during the hide and seek game. All of that makes sense. But then he's just back to being the good guy, trying to save a baby because the mom asked him to and because it's a baby. That's really about it. It's kind of like a flip just switches. It's like, oh, he was kind of insane for a minute, he's back to the good guy, keep moving forward, right? I really think they could have added an arc into his character about how he abandoned his daughter in order to stop the games, and he failed to do that. He failed to stop the games, and by proxy, he failed his daughter. And so I think they really could have written it clearer to have it be a motivation for him to try to save this baby. I really think if they had explored these failures a little deeper into Gi-hun as a character, it really would have sold me on the baby a bit more. Like I mentioned with the mother character, Gi-hun could see the baby as a way for him to do some more good in the world, which I think is the point of the baby, right? But it's not clear, it's not convincing, it's not delivered. If I had actually been convinced that Gi-hun cared about this baby and had a reason to care about this baby besides him being a good guy and it's a baby, I think it would have made me care a lot more about the baby, and I think it would have made Gi-hun's character arc throughout the season a lot more compelling. Just to repeat myself a little, I do think Gi-hun is a lot better off than a lot of the previous characters I mentioned, but there was a lot of failed potential here. Quick side note, I hated the VIPs in this season. I didn't mind them at all in season 1. I felt it added to the commentary. They were a bit obnoxious, but that definitely felt like the point. But the VIPs in this season really felt like stand-ins for the viewer in a really awful way. As soon as we got those scenes with that one VIP being like, oh, I bet it on player 222. There's no way this baby can win. I guess I lost my money. Oh, I wonder if the baby will win, right? All that shit. I knew the fucking baby wasn't gonna die. I knew that the baby was gonna win. I knew that Gi-hun wasn't gonna make it out. I just knew everything that was going to happen based on that character because of how clearly it was meant to be a stand-in for us, the viewers. Before moving on to my next section, I'd like to mention that this video is very different from all of my other videos. For my other videos, I'll rewatch whatever I'm analyzing, take tons and tons of notes, and then spend 2 or 3 weeks writing the script. For this video, I'm just yapping while referencing notes that I wrote after watching season 3 for the first and only time that I was admittedly crossfaded for. I just had a lot of thoughts about this season and I wanted to get them out and just move on with my life. Also, to be timely relevant with a Squid Game video for views, what can I say? Content brain. That being said, if you are enjoying this yap session, I encourage you to check out one of my more thought out video essays. The video I published before this one about the Javik ship from Arcane got a ton of positive feedback, so if you've seen Arcane, you'll probably like that video. Back to Squid Game and back to my notes. The final section of my notes is titled No Satisfaction and No Closure. The first thing I have in here is my favorite character, player 120. Her death was so cheap. First off, like I briefly mentioned before, I really didn't buy 333's motivation to just keep killing other players during the game in order to increase the prize money pot. That really hadn't been a part of his character until that game. I think he might have voted yes at some point to keep the games going. I did not check, and I'm not going to, but even still, that is not enough to convince me of that character change. So that's point 1. I didn't buy 333's Bloodlust. Point 2 is that player 120 is ex-Special Forces. She's shown to be very aware in combat situations in Season 2 and in Season 3. There's no way in hell that she would have just stuck her head in the door with her back exposed during that game to be like, hey guys, I found the exit. I hope no one stabs me in the back while I'm looking through the door. Like, come on. I did cry when she died because she was my favorite character and because I'm a faggot. The town inside me. But it didn't feel earned. I am okay that she died. That's not my problem here. I knew going into hide and seek that she was probably a goner. She's spending her time protecting the old woman and the pregnant lady. Of course she's not making it out of that game. Plus, queer characters in media don't typically make it too far. That being said, her death could have hit so much harder if it hadn't been so cheap. Have her die in a fight. Have her take out the attacker, but she dies to blood loss from her wounds or something, protecting player 222 and the mother. Or they could have had her intentionally sacrifice her in the hide and seek game or in a different way in a different game. They would have to change jump rope. It wouldn't work in that situation, but not the point. The point is that she could have directly and intentionally sacrificed herself in order to save the people who accepted her as a woman. She could have had this whole arc about not needing to finish her transition because in the games, the people saw her as the woman who she is. Her death could have been so much more, but instead, she gets stabbed in the back in order to cause more relationship drama between the two most flat characters in the whole show. The final part in my notes is about each of the 3 individual endings to the 3 different plot lines we see in season 3. First, the guard and the cancer dad. I just didn't give a fuck about that guy. I don't care. What's his character besides having a sick daughter? He doesn't have one. To this arc's credit, I do think the guard is one of the best written characters in the show. Her motivations are well established and they're explored and they're built upon as the show carries forward. But because of how little I cared about the cancer dad, I didn't care, man. I did feel a small warm fuzzy when we see the dad is back with his daughter when she goes to visit them and everything like that, but a small warm fuzzy is not a satisfying ending. The ending for the guard's personal story left me a little frustrated, but it's really not the end of the world. I don't think it was that bad, especially compared to a lot of the other problems that season 3 had. I personally really liked the moment where she finds her own file in the head manager's office and it says that her daughter is dead. Obviously that's very sad, but that's what I liked about it. It was impactful. Her character had been searching and searching and searching for her missing daughter in North Korea, but here she finds out that her daughter truly is gone. The scene where she almost kills herself but stops due to the baby's cries is also decently impactful in my opinion. I personally would have preferred if her arc ended with her being able to accept that her child was gone, but finding peace in the fact that she reunited the cancer dad and his daughter. I think that would have been a really bittersweet ending for her character. But instead, we find out there's a chance her daughter might be in China and she goes off looking for her. I don't really think it was that bad to have her going off to China to search for her missing daughter with the chance that she might still be alive out there, but I just personally would have found it a little more hard-hitting if they had stuck with their guns and had her character accept that her daughter was gone. That's not a hill I'm gonna die on though. I think that is just my personal preference and not a flaw in writing. Gi-hun's ending frustrates me a lot more though. By the end of the show, I didn't really care that he died. I did feel sad when he made his sacrifice, and I thought his final speech of "we're not horses" was a really great speech and a really cool moment, especially for his character. But once again, I didn't really care about the baby, and so his final sacrifice just was whatever. I honestly saw that coming from the second that he took the baby from 222 and jump rope. As soon as that happened, I was like, okay, my boy Gi-hun is gonna die and the baby's gonna live. Great. And I was right. I won't repeat myself entirely here, but make me care about the baby and his death would have hit a lot harder. Now, the worst conclusion of these 3 various plot lines to take place in the show is easily the cop. It ended so dumb. What was the point? Seriously. Hours of the show is spent on them looking for the island, and all of that time just concludes with the cop making it onto the island. He runs in, he sees his brother, he goes, "In-ho! Why?" And that's it. That's it. You seriously could have cut this entire plot from the show and nothing would have been lost. They have no impact on the plot at all besides saving the cancer dad when he's escaping from the island on the boat. That's it. That's all they do. Why the cop and the front man didn't have a more substantial scene together, it just blows my mind. I don't understand the decision to not actually have a good, powerful scene between the pair. Instead, we just get them looking at each other from a football field away, and that's it. Like, ugh. I'm moving on because I can only say this is stupid so many times. Finally, I feel like this video would be amiss if I didn't touch on the final scene of the show. I thought the frontman bringing Gi-hun's daughter, his winnings, and his bloody tracksuit was a good scene. Why he gave her the tracksuit, I don't know, but the rest of the scene was good. When he tells her that her father is dead, I felt it. I felt it. Also, this is just a headcanon, but the frontman was so in love with Gi-hun, right? Is that just me? Maybe that's my next queer subtext video. Probably not, but you never know. They should have kissed. Moving on. The recruiter being in the USA, I don't think is a good or bad thing. I'm fairly indifferent on this. It does show that Gi-hun's efforts to stop the games did fail completely, which kind of sucks. It kind of devalues all of the efforts from before. With that being said though, I don't need main characters to win. Some of my favorite stories don't have happy endings, and I think there's a lot of value in having a main character lose. But again, because Gi-hun didn't really have a satisfying ending in my opinion, it kind of feels like a kick in the teeth to just also show that his efforts to stop the games failed completely. With the implication of there possibly being an American spin-off of Squid Games, I'm honestly not opposed to that at all. I like Squid Games, I want more, I would happily watch an American spin-off, but I think if that spin-off ever actually happens, it would be done purely for money, and so I'm not hopeful that it would be good. It would probably be worse than season 3 if we're being real. My final thoughts on season 3 is it was not awful, it was just very disappointing and a little anticlimactic in a lot of ways, and there was a ton of missed opportunities on the table. The score I give it in my head is a 6.8 out of 10. 7 feels way too high, but a 6 and even a 6.5 feels way too low. So 6.8. Just because I gave that one a number, I feel like I have to give season 1 and 2 a number. I would give season 1 a 9 out of 10. It's fantastic. And I would honestly give season 2 an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a really good continuation of the series. I just wish that season 3 had delivered on that continuation a lot better. So what did you think about Squid Game? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Am I wrong? Am I right? Tell me what you think. Now that you've reached the end of the video, as a reward, I'm going to show you something. Check out this dope Luffy card I pulled. Luffy Mongo Rare. This is like a $90 card, gang. Anyway, see ya.
Don't you worry, it'll be okay.